A decorated two-star general forced into the dirt in his Sunday best by a rookie cop with a chip on his shoulder. Officer Blaine Mercer thought he had bagged an easy target. He had no idea the man in handcuffs was one phone call away from bringing the full weight of the Pentagon to his doorstep. Late at night, the clock on the dashboard of the midnight blue Mercedes S-Class glowed softly in the darkness. Major General Everett Kane was exhausted, but it was the good kind of exhaustion. He had just spent the weekend in Richmond, Virginia, attending the college graduation of his youngest niece. Now he was making the long drive back up Interstate 95, transitioning onto the darker, winding stretches of Route 1 toward his home in Alexandria. In his late 50s, Everett had seen the worst of humanity. He had commanded battalions in Fallujah, coordinated massive logistical movements across the mountains of Afghanistan, and earned a Silver Star for pulling 3 of his men from a burning Humvee under heavy enemy fire. He was a man of immense discipline, carrying the quiet, unshakable confidence of someone who had stared death in the face and never blinked. Tonight, however, he was just a proud uncle in a tailored charcoal suit, listening to a low jazz station and looking forward to his own bed. The road was nearly empty. The heavy autumn fog rolled in from the Virginia tree line, masking the sharp curves of the highway. Everett was cruising at exactly the posted speed limit. Then the darkness shattered. Red and blue strobes ignited the fog in his rearview mirror. The wail of a police siren cut through the smooth saxophone pouring from his car speakers. Everett's pulse didn't spike. Decades of military training had hardwired him to remain calm in sudden high-stress situations. He checked his speedometer, confirmed he was well within the legal limit, and signaled to pull over onto the gravel shoulder. He put the vehicle in park, turned off the engine, and immediately engaged his hazard lights. As a black man in America, Everett knew the unwritten drill, a survival protocol that transcended rank, medals, or tax brackets. He turned on the interior dome lights so the cabin was fully illuminated. He rolled down all 4 windows to remove any blind spots. Finally, he placed both of his large, calloused hands at the 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock positions on the steering wheel, linking his fingers together. He waited. In his side mirror, he watched the patrol car door swing open. A young police officer stepped out, adjusting his heavy utility belt. This was Officer Blaine Mercer, a patrolman with a tight military-style fade, a protruding jaw, and a reputation in his department for being overly aggressive. Mercer approached the Mercedes not with the casual stride of a public servant conducting a routine traffic stop, but with the tactical caution of a man approaching an active threat. His right hand rested heavily on the grip of his unholstered service weapon. Mercer reached the driver's side window and immediately shined his heavy Maglite flashlight directly into Everett's eyes, blinding him. "License, registration, and proof of insurance," Mercer barked, his voice dripping with an unwarranted hostility. Everett squinted against the harsh beam, keeping his hands firmly planted on the wheel. "Good evening, officer. My wallet is in my right jacket pocket. The registration and insurance are in the glove compartment. How would you like me to proceed?" Mercer sneered, keeping the flashlight pinned to Everett's face. "I said get your papers. Don't make sudden movements. I'm watching your hands." "Moving my right hand to my jacket pocket now," Everett stated smoothly, his voice a calm, deep baritone that commanded respect in war rooms but seemingly aggravated the young patrolman. He slowly retrieved his wallet, extracting his Virginia driver's license. "Moving my hand into the glove box now." He handed the requested documents through the window. Mercer snatched them, shining his light on the license, then back at Everett's face, then sweeping the beam across the luxurious leather interior of the Mercedes. "Everett Kane," Mercer read, dragging out the syllables. "This your car, Everett?" "It is," Everett replied, his tone even. "An S-Class Mercedes retails for what, 120 grand? Mercer's tone shifted from authoritative to openly suspicious. "What line of work are you in that pays for a ride like this?" "I work for the federal government," Everett said cleanly. He didn't feel the need to boast about his rank. In his experience, civilian police officers rarely understood the hierarchy of the military anyway, and he had no desire to escalate the situation by demanding respect. "Federal government?" Mercer repeated, a mocking edge to his voice. "Right, and where are you coming from tonight, Everett?" "A family event in Richmond. I'm heading home to Alexandria." Mercer leaned closer to the window, sniffing the air aggressively. "You know why I pulled you over?" "I do not, officer. I was maintaining the speed limit and my vehicle is in full working order." "You swerved back there," Mercer lied. It was a classic, unverifiable pretext for a stop. "Cross the double yellow line. You've been drinking tonight, smoking something you shouldn't be." "I have not had a drop of alcohol, nor do I use narcotics," Everett replied, his posture rigid. He was beginning to recognize the script Mercer was reading from. It was a dangerous, familiar game. "I smell marijuana," Mercer declared, stepping back slightly and dropping his hand back to his gun belt. "Step out of the vehicle." Everett's jaw tightened. The scent of marijuana was the universal skeleton key for bypassing the Fourth Amendment. There was no marijuana in the car. There had never been marijuana in the car. Officer Mercer, Everett said, reading the man's name tag for the first time. I respectfully disagree with your assessment. There are no illegal substances in this vehicle. I do not consent to a search. I didn't ask for your consent, Mercer shouted, his temper flaring. He unclipped his radio. Dispatch Unit 4. I need a secondary unit at mile marker 42. Suspect is being uncooperative. He glared back at Everett. I said step out of the vehicle now. Everett knew the statistics. He knew what happened to black men on dark roads who argued with angry armed police officers. He was a tactician. He knew when a battlefield was disadvantageous. I am stepping out of the vehicle, Everett announced loudly and clearly. He unbuckled his seatbelt with slow, deliberate movements. He opened the heavy door and stepped out into the biting chill. He stood at his full height, 6'3", with the broad-shouldered build of a career paratrooper. For a split second, Mercer took a step back, visibly intimidated by Everett's imposing physical presence. But that fear quickly morphed into a volatile, defensive rage. Turn around, face the car, put your hands on the roof, Mercer yelled, drawing his taser and aiming the red laser dot directly at the center of Everett's tailored suit jacket. Everett turned, placing his hands flat on the cold metal of his own roof. Breathe, he told himself. Maintain bearing. Let him make the mistakes. Officer Mercer closed the distance, shoving Everett aggressively against the side of the Mercedes. The impact bruised Everett's ribs, but he didn't make a sound. Mercer kicked Everett's legs apart, forcing him into a wide, uncomfortable stance, and began a rough, invasive pat-down. Mercer patted down the torso, the legs, and then reached forcefully into Everett's pockets, pulling out his keys, his cell phone, and his wallet. Mercer tossed the items onto the trunk of the car. Nothing on you, Mercer muttered, sounding almost disappointed. Now we're going to tear this car apart. You're going to stand right here. Officer, Everett said, keeping his voice strictly modulated. Before you proceed, I highly recommend you open my wallet. My secondary identification is inside. I already saw your license, Everett, Mercer snapped, moving toward the driver's side door to begin tearing through the interior. Look at the other ID, Everett commanded. It wasn't a request this time. It was the voice of a two-star general, a tone that had halted advancing infantry lines and silenced chaotic briefing rooms. The sheer authority in the command made Mercer pause. He grabbed the leather wallet off the trunk, flipping it open. Behind a clear plastic window sat a thick government-issued common access card. The United States Department of Defense seal gleamed in the glow of the red and blue police lights. Mercer squinted at it, reading the bold text. Hayes Everett, rank Major General 08, branch United States Army, status active duty. Mercer stared at the card. Then he looked at the tall black man leaning against the car. A slow, cruel smile spread across the officer's face. A Major General? Mercer scoffed, letting out a sharp bark of laughter. Are you kidding me with this? You expect me to believe you're a two-star general in the United States Army? You can verify that identification through your dispatch, Everett stated, or you can call the duty officer at the Pentagon. The number is on the back of the card. This is the best fake I've seen in years, Mercer sneered, pulling the CAC card out of the wallet and flicking it with his finger. I bet you use this to get out of speeding tickets all the time, don't you? Stolen valor is a federal offense, buddy. You're in a lot of trouble. Everett closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. The absolute ignorance of the man was staggering. Officer Mercer, I strongly advise you to make that phone call. If you proceed with this course of action, you will be making a career-ending mistake. Are you threatening me? Mercer roared, suddenly closing the gap and grabbing Everett by the collar of his suit. Are you threatening a police officer? I am stating a tactical reality, Everett replied coldly. Hands behind your back, Mercer shouted, spinning Everett around and forcing his wrists together. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit deeply into Everett's skin. Mercer purposely ratcheted them as tight as they would go, pinching the nerves in Everett's wrists. Everett Kane, you are under arrest for suspicion of driving under the influence, resisting a lawful order, and presenting fraudulent government identification. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. Within minutes, a backup cruiser arrived. Another young officer stepped out, watching as Mercer shoved the handcuffed general into the cramped, plastic-lined back seat of the patrol car. What have we got, Blaine? The second officer asked. Got a live one, Mercer laughed, holding up the DOD ID card. Driving a stolen-looking Benz, smelling like weed, and carrying a fake Pentagon ID. Guy claims he's an Army general. The second officer chuckled. Right, and I'm the Secretary of Defense. Put him in the cage. I'll wait for the tow truck. As Everett sat in the stifling, foul-smelling backseat of the cruiser, he watched his pristine Mercedes being loaded onto a flatbed tow truck. The car had been a gift to himself after his last deployment. Now it was being impounded over the bruised ego of a small-town cop. Everett felt a cold, calculated fury settling into his chest. He didn't shout. He didn't scream about his rights. He sat in total silence, calculating his next moves like a chess grandmaster. The ride to the station took a short while. Mercer drove erratically, taking sharp turns to intentionally throw Everett off balance in the back seat. When they finally pulled into the precinct in a wealthy, insulated suburban county, Mercer dragged Everett out of the car by his handcuffs. The harsh fluorescent lights of the precinct lobby were blinding. Mercer marched Everett up to the booking desk where a bored-looking desk sergeant was typing on a computer. "Hey, Sergeant Crow," Mercer called out, shoving Everett toward the counter. "Got a good one for booking." Sergeant Elias Crow, a heavy-set man with tired eyes, looked up. "What's the charge?" "DUI, refusal, resisting, and fraud," Mercer said, proudly dumping Everett's belongings onto the metal counter, the keys, the wallet, the phone, and a heavy gold watch. Crow began to inventory the items. He picked up the heavy gold watch. "Rolex Submariner, nice piece." "Probably fake, just like his ID," Mercer chimed in. He reached into the pile and pulled out a heavy, solid bronze coin. It was intricately engraved with a bald eagle and 3 stars. Mercer tossed it onto the desk. "Look at this garbage. Guys carrying around poker chips." Everett's eyes narrowed. It was a Commander's Challenge coin personally handed to him by the Lieutenant General of the 82nd Airborne Division after a successful combat operation in Syria. "Take his tie, his belt, and his shoelaces," Sergeant Crow ordered, mechanically ignoring the coin. "Put him in holding cell 3. I'll run his prints." 2 other officers approached, stripping Everett of his silk tie, his leather belt, and the laces from his Oxfords. They treated him roughly, yanking him by the shoulders. Everett remained an immovable pillar of stoicism. "I'm entitled to a phone call," Everett finally spoke, his voice echoing in the concrete room. "You'll get your call when we're done processing you, General," Mercer mocked, grabbing Everett by the arm and leading him down a bleak gray hallway. The holding cell smelled of urine and industrial bleach. There was a single metal bench bolted to the wall. Mercer shoved him inside and slammed the heavy iron bars shut. The lock echoed with a sickening clang. "Make yourself at home," Mercer smiled through the bars. "The magistrate won't be in until morning. You've got a long night ahead of you." Everett stood in the center of the cell, his hands finally free from the cuffs. His wrists were bruised and bleeding slightly. His tailored suit rumpled and dirtied from being shoved against the car. He looked at the camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling. He knew they were watching. He sat down on the cold metal bench, crossed his legs, and folded his hands in his lap. He waited with the infinite patience of a sniper in a blind. Some time passed. The precinct was quiet, save for the occasional radio chatter echoing down the hall. Finally, heavy footsteps approached. Sergeant Crow appeared at the bars looking slightly pale. Crow held a cordless phone in his hand. "All right, Kane," Crow grunted, sliding the phone through the small slot in the bars. "You get one call, make it quick. Local numbers only." Everett took the phone. He didn't dial a local public defender. He didn't dial his wife to worry her in the middle of the night. He dialed a secure direct 10-digit line to the National Military Command Center at the Pentagon. It rang once. "Duty officer, Major Lang speaking," a crisp voice answered. "Lang, this is Major General Everett Kane, authentication code Delta 79ER Tango." There was a brief pause on the line as the Major verified the code. "Authentication confirmed. Good evening, General Kane. How can I assist you, sir?" "Major, I need you to wake up General Silas Reed," Everett ordered, referencing the 4-star Chief of Staff of the Army, "and tell him I have a situation in Virginia." The silence on the secure telephone line was absolute and profound, stretching for a few moments before Major Lang finally responded. The young officer's voice had lost all of its bureaucratic stiffness, replaced instantly by the sharp, immediate urgency of a soldier receiving a critical operational command. "Yes, General Kane, right away, sir," Major Lang said, his fingers already flying across his encrypted keyboard. "Can you provide me with your exact coordinates and current situational status?" Everett maintained his perfectly modulated tone, speaking clearly so the recording devices in the police precinct would capture every single syllable of the conversation. "I am currently being detained in a holding cell at the county police precinct in Virginia, directly off Route 1. I was subjected to an unwarranted traffic stop by an Officer Blaine Mercer. I have been falsely accused of driving under the influence, resisting arrest, and carrying fraudulent federal identification. My vehicle, a Mercedes S-Class, has been illegally impounded and my personal belongings, including my Department of Defense credentials, have been seized. Notify General Reed that I have been unlawfully deprived of my liberty under the color of law, and I expect an immediate, appropriate military and federal response to secure my release." "Well, understood, General. I am patching this transmission directly through to the Chief of Staff's residence and simultaneously notifying the Provost Marshal General. The United States Army Criminal Investigation Division will be mobilized immediately. Please remain safe, sir. Cavalry is on the way." Everett handed the phone back through the iron bars without another word. Sergeant Crow took the receiver, a deep, unsettling frown creasing his heavy forehead. He looked at the tall, impeccably calm man sitting on the metal bench. Suspects usually cried, screamed, begged, or threatened lawsuits. They never spoke with such terrifying clinical precision. They certainly never ordered the awakening of a 4-star general. Who was that? Crow asked, his voice losing some of its previous gruffness. That was the beginning of the end of this precinct's current administration, Everett replied softly, staring directly into Crow's eyes. I suggest you go back to your desk, Sergeant, and run my fingerprints through your automated system. I believe you will find the results highly educational. Crow swallowed hard, a sudden cold knot forming in his stomach. He turned and walked briskly back to the booking desk. Officer Mercer was leaning against the counter, loudly boasting to two other patrolmen who had just returned from their shifts. Mercer was enthusiastically pantomiming the way he had shoved the fake general against the side of the luxury vehicle. I'm telling you, the guy was a total piece of work, Mercer laughed, sipping from a styrofoam cup of bad coffee. Had the suit, the car, the fake Pentagon badge. He probably runs a high-end fraud ring out of D.C. The magistrate is going to have a field day with this clown tomorrow morning. Crow ignored the young officer's arrogant grandstanding. He sat down heavily in his chair, took the physical fingerprint cards they had just rolled from Everett's hands, and scanned them directly into the automated fingerprint identification system. The AFIS database connected local precincts directly to the FBI's National Crime Information Center. Crow hit the submit button and waited. Usually a standard background check took several minutes, returning minor warrants, past convictions, or a simple green screen indicating a clean record. This time it took only moments. The ancient computer monitor didn't turn green. It flashed a brilliant, blinding crimson red. A high-pitched warning alarm began to beep rapidly from the computer's internal speakers, a sound Crow had only heard a handful of times in his long career. The text on the screen was locked in bold black letters against the red background. Critical alert, restricted file, top secret, SSCI clearance, recognized, subject Kane Everett, status active, duty United States Army, rank Major General 08, Department of Defense Security Clearance Level 5, Yankee White, warning, this individual is a high-level federal official. Any unauthorized detention is a violation of U.S. Code Title 18. Crow's face drained of all color. His heart began to hammer violently against his ribs. He felt dizzy, the fluorescent lights of the booking area suddenly seeming entirely too bright. The system was demanding an authorization code just to view the rest of the file, a level of security clearance that completely bypassed local law enforcement protocols. Mercer, Crow croaked, his voice cracking horribly. He pointed a trembling thick finger at the glowing red monitor. Mercer, get over here right now. Officer Mercer ambled over, a smug, self-satisfied grin still plastered across his face. What's up, Sarge? Did his rap sheet come back? How many fraud charges does our fake general have? Read the screen, you absolute idiot, Crow whispered, absolute terror leaking into his tone. Read the damn screen. Mercer leaned over the desk. His eyes scanned the bold text. His smug grin slowly began to slip, replaced first by confusion and then by a stubborn, desperate denial. It's a glitch, Mercer insisted, waving his hand dismissively. Or he's a master hacker. These fraud rings, they have guys who can hack into the FBI databases and plant fake profiles. It's a defense mechanism. There is absolutely no way that guy in Cell 3 is a 2-star general. It is a direct NCIC hit, Mercer, Crow hissed, standing up and grabbing the younger officer by the front of his uniform shirt. This system does not glitch. You just falsely arrested, assaulted, and imprisoned a decorated military commander who holds a Yankee White security clearance. Do you have any idea what you have done? We are all going to federal prison. Mercer aggressively shoved Crow's hands away, his own panic manifesting as volatile anger. Calm down. You're letting a suspect play mind games with you. I'm going to go back there and get the truth out of him right now. Before Crow could stop him, Mercer stormed down the gray hallway toward the holding cells. He marched up to the iron bars of Cell 3, slamming his heavy flashlight violently against the metal grate. The deafening clang echoed through the concrete block, but Everett Kane did not flinch. The general remained perfectly still on the metal bench, his posture impeccable, his expression entirely unbothered. All right, Kane, the games are over, Mercer snarled, though his voice lacked its previous absolute conviction. I don't know who you paid to hack your fingerprints into the federal system, but it's not going to work. You're going to confess to the fraudulent ID right now, or I'm going to make sure the prosecutor tacks on federal cybercrime charges to your warrant. Everett finally looked up, his dark eyes locking onto Mercer's pale, sweating face. The general did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Officer Mercer, Everett said smoothly. In a short time, a very large contingent of heavily armed federal agents and military police officers will walk through the front doors of this precinct. When they do, they're going to take your badge, they're going to take your firearm, and then they're going to take your freedom. You have very little time to mentally prepare yourself for the complete and total destruction of the life you currently know. Mercer opened his mouth to shout another threat, but the words died in his throat. For the first time all night, looking into the cold, completely unafraid eyes of the man he had arrested, Mercer finally realized the catastrophic magnitude of his mistake. The storm arrived in short order. The quiet atmosphere of the suburban police precinct was violently shattered by the roaring engines of three black, heavily armored Chevrolet Suburbans tearing into the front lot. They bypassed standard parking spaces, pulling onto the concrete sidewalk and blocking the main entrance. Behind them, two dark green military police cruisers skidded to a halt, blue and red lights throwing wild, frantic shadows against the brick walls. The heavy glass doors of the precinct were thrown open with immense force, slamming against interior walls. A dozen men flooded into the lobby. Half wore dark navy windbreakers of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The other half wore crisp, intimidating tactical uniforms of the United States Army Criminal Investigation Division. At the front walked Colonel Victor Langford, a deeply serious military investigator with a perfectly tailored uniform. Beside him was Special Agent Jasper Hale from the FBI Regional Field Office. Sergeant Crow stood behind the booking desk, his hands raised in the air as if he were being arrested. The two patrolmen who had been laughing with Mercer moments earlier backed away against the wall, terrified. "Who is the commanding officer of this facility?" Colonel Langford demanded, his voice echoing like a gunshot. "Chief Price is on his way, sir," Crow stammered, body shaking. "He was called at home." "I do not care about your chief," Langford snapped, marching directly up to the desk. "I am Colonel Langford, United States Army CID. You are currently holding Major General Everett Kane against his will. Hand over the keys to his cell immediately, or my men will dismantle the bars with a blowtorch and arrest every sworn individual in this building for kidnapping a federal official." Crow frantically grabbed the heavy ring of brass keys from his belt, hands trembling so violently he nearly dropped them. He practically ran around the counter, leading federal agents down the concrete hallway. Officer Mercer was still standing in front of cell 3 when the vanguard of federal power rounded the corner. When Mercer saw the military police gripping tactical rifles, his knees physically buckled. He stumbled backward, pressing his spine against the cinder block wall, his face completely devoid of color. Sergeant Crow jammed the key into the heavy iron lock, twisting it and pulling the barred door wide open. Colonel Langford immediately stepped into the cell, snapping off a crisp military salute. "General Kane, sir, I apologize for the delay. Are you injured?" Everett stood up, slowly returning the salute with effortless grace. He brushed dust off his rumpled charcoal suit. "No severe injuries, Colonel. Just some minor bruising from a rather enthusiastic search. Have my personal effects been secured?" "They are being secured right now, sir," Langford replied, stepping aside to let the general walk out. As Everett stepped into the hallway, the local chief of police, Chief Donovan Price, finally came sprinting down the corridor. He was entirely out of breath, hastily buttoning a uniform shirt over his undershirt. "General Kane," Chief Price gasped, his face bright red. "Sir, please, there has been a monumental misunderstanding. I assure you this does not reflect the values of my department. We are prepared to drop all charges instantly and offer a public apology." Everett stopped walking. He turned slowly, looking down at the sweating police chief. The silence in the hallway was suffocating. "Chief Price," Everett began, his voice dangerously quiet, "a misunderstanding is misreading a license plate. What happened tonight was a targeted, aggressive deprivation of civil rights driven by racial profiling." Everett turned his gaze to Officer Mercer, who was shrinking against the wall, tears of sheer panic welling in his eyes. "Officer Mercer unlawfully detained me," Everett continued, his tone clinical and devastating. "He assaulted me. He illegally searched my vehicle, and he ignored valid, federally issued identification because his personal prejudices rendered him incapable of believing a black man could outrank him. If he is willing to do this to a superior general, I shudder to think what he has done to average civilians in this community who lack power." Chief Price swallowed, nodding rapidly. "General, I completely agree. Officer Mercer is suspended immediately pending termination." "He is not just suspended," Special Agent Jasper Hale interjected, stepping forward with heavy federal handcuffs. "Blaine Mercer, you are under arrest by the Federal Bureau of Investigation for criminal deprivation of rights. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Mercer let out a pathetic sob as he was spun around, stripped of his duty belt, and marched down the hallway. Everett retrieved his belongings from the booking desk, sliding his heavy Rolex back onto his bruised wrist. Stepping into the crisp breeze, he walked toward his idling Mercedes, perfectly content to let corrupt men dig inescapable graves forever. If you found this story of justice and accountability as thrilling as we did, please hit that like button. Sharing this video helps us bring more incredible true-to-life stories to your screen. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss an upload. We want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below on how you would have handled Officer Blaine Mercer. See you all next time, friends.